It's Joypad of the day, or, well, Joypads of the day really, because I'm going to look at a whole, well, like the progression of a particular kind of Joypad. And I'm talking about this, the 8-bit era console Joypad. This is from the Scorpion 8. It's, well, it's a Famiclone. If you ignore the turbo buttons, it's basically the Famicom pad. D-pad on the left, select, start, A and B buttons. And it had this cool, like, ridge around it, which is neither here nor there in terms of how it feels in the hand, but allows it to slot into the console in a rather cool manner. People will be more familiar with what it became in the West, which is the NES pad. Virtually the same thing, really. Select and start buttons, B and A, and the D-pad. The D-pad was quite innovative at the time in that it was a very practical and efficient way of getting joystick control without having a stick, making it very compact. These first became commonly used on the Nintendo Game & Watch, and then everyone and their dog copied them. So the next thing that we'll be familiar with is that. I mean, visually, stylistically, I actually prefer this. Could we call it a D-pad? It is kind of a D-pad. On this, I actually find absolutely horrible. But you've got your two buttons over there on the right, and no select and start button. They put a pause button on the console, which is really weird, and I believe the start is on there, which seemed a silly thing to do, but maybe they didn't want to be accused of copying Nintendo, which obviously they were. Originality? None. Then Atari, who tended to go more for sticks, came up with this D-pad, which you can actually plug a stick into. You probably wouldn't want to because it's sort of horrible. And your two buttons there. This is, of all the ones I'm going to show you, is probably the most original looking in that it doesn't look exactly the same as the others, just in the layout, because the D-pad is slightly higher up. But, you know, the concept is still there. It's a small rectangle, you've got two buttons and one D-pad. Wholly unoriginal. And then you've got the, come here, PC Engine pad. It's slightly bigger than the NES pad, but that's about all you can say about it. You know, select, run, button 2, button 1, D-pad. It's the same thing. they're the same. And then after that, you've got this, the Amstrad. I mean, they must have been looking at the PC Engine one. Stylistically, it's very similar. But yeah, button 1, button 2. Instead of, it's curious actually the way they order them, in that, well, the Japanese ones you've got button A there and B there, where here 1 and 2. I don't know, maybe there's a reason for that. We certainly start things on the left and work to the right. Do they do it the other? Who knows? Who cares? I'm waffling. D-pad there, two buttons. It's the same. And this was, when was this brought out? Quite late. I don't remember exactly what year it was. Late 80s coming into the 90s, something like that. So certainly in the 8-bit era, there was a good deal of copying going on, and the same is absolutely true of the games themselves. I mean, they were just Pac-Man clones, Space Invader clones, Galaxian clones, just clone after clone after clone, and they were doing the same with the hardware. Nintendo innovated, and everyone else copied, really. It amuses me. I had thought about where, with every other controller, I'm doing an individual video for each controller. Really, with these 8-bit pads, it makes no sense to do a separate video for each one, because apart from styling cues, they're all the same. You might get a little bit of difference in terms of responsiveness from pad, D-pad and buttons, but ultimately you get a rectangle, you stick a D-pad on the left, you stick two buttons on the right. Maybe you do and maybe you don't have select and pause or run, whatever buttons, but it's all the same thing. Personally, I don't rate them that highly. I find them quite uncomfortable. But there you have it, 8-bit Joypads. Thank you for watching.